Imagine walking into a cave that humans visited thousands of years ago. There are no bodies, no skeletons, no teeth, no obvious trace of the people who were there. But scientists take a tiny sample from the cave wall and discover something extraordinary: ancient human DNA. Not inside a bone, not inside a tooth, on the wall itself. So who left it there? And could this DNA actually belong to the prehistoric people who made the cave art? A new study published in Nature Communications in June 2026 may have just opened a completely new way of finding ancient humans. For decades, ancient DNA research has mostly depended on things like bones, teeth, and sediments. Those materials can preserve genetic material from people who lived thousands or sometimes much longer ago. But cave walls were different. Scientists knew that DNA could potentially bind to mineral surfaces. The question was, could human DNA actually survive on a cave wall for thousands of years? Researchers set out to test that question. They analyzed samples from 24 rock art panels across 11 caves in Spain and Portugal. The samples included painted areas, simple marks, hand stencils, and other cave wall surfaces. And what they found was something archaeologists had rarely been able to work with before: ancient human DNA preserved directly on cave walls. One of the most interesting discoveries came from Escurial Cave in Portugal. Researchers recovered ancient human mitochondrial and nuclear DNA from a pigmented mineral crust. But there was something particularly important about the sample. They didn't detect faunal DNA alongside the human DNA. Why does that matter? Because caves aren't empty laboratories. Animals live in them. Animal remains can be present. Sediments can contain DNA from many different species. So when researchers find human DNA mixed with DNA from numerous animals, it can be difficult to determine exactly how the human DNA arrived there. But in this particular Escorial sample, the absence of detectable animal DNA pointed toward a much more interesting possibility: direct human contact. The researchers say touching, rubbing, or deposition of bodily fluids are possible explanations. In other words, someone may have physically interacted with that surface thousands of years ago. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting. You might be thinking, they found human DNA on cave art, so they found the DNA of the artist? Not so fast. The scientists themselves are very careful about this. The study does not conclusively prove that the DNA came from the people who created the artwork. And that's extremely important. Imagine someone touches a cave wall today. Their DNA could remain there, but that doesn't mean they created the painting next to it. The same problem exists in archaeology. Ancient humans could have touched a wall centuries or even thousands of years after another person created the artwork. DNA could also potentially move through sediment or other environmental processes, so the discovery doesn't solve the mystery of who made the paintings. Instead, it creates a completely new possibility. And this may actually be more important than the original question. Scientists also found ancient human DNA on unpainted cave wall samples. That means the phenomenon isn't necessarily restricted to artwork. The cave wall itself can potentially preserve traces of human activity. Think about what that could mean. Archaeologists don't always find human bones at a site. Sometimes a group may have visited a cave briefly. They might have left behind almost nothing: a few tools, some sediment, maybe a tiny amount of pigment, and now, potentially, their DNA. That changes the archaeological record. Instead of looking only for objects humans left behind, scientists may increasingly be able to search for molecular traces of the humans themselves. But how can scientists tell ancient DNA from modern contamination? This is one of the hardest parts. Modern humans are everywhere. Researchers themselves have DNA. Visitors to caves have DNA. People working with archaeological materials have DNA. So scientists need methods that can distinguish genuine ancient molecules from recent contamination. One clue is DNA damage. Ancient DNA tends to accumulate characteristic chemical damage over time. The researchers also examined specific genetic positions that can help distinguish modern human DNA from archaic human sequences. In the Escorial samples, the recovered human DNA supported a modern human origin rather than an archaic human one. So this wasn't simply, there's human DNA here. The researchers had to ask, is it ancient? Is it human? Is it contamination? Could it have come from an animal? And most importantly, how did it get onto the wall? And here's where things could become even more exciting in the future. Cave art is often associated with early modern humans. But there's an ongoing scientific question about the relationship between different ancient human groups and some early cave art. Could Neanderthals have created some forms of rock art? In the past, archaeology had very limited ways of connecting a particular artwork to a particular population. A painting doesn't come with a name tag. But imagine a future where scientists could reliably recover ancient human DNA directly associated with a particular artwork. Suddenly, genetics could potentially help connect people with cultural behavior. The 2026 study doesn't achieve that yet, but the researchers describe this as a new possibility for future research. And that's where this discovery matters. The researchers tested caves across Spain and Portugal, and the results were mixed. Some samples contained human DNA, some contained animal DNA, some contained both, and many samples produced no useful ancient human DNA at all. So we shouldn't imagine archaeologists can simply walk into any cave, scrape the wall, and identify everyone who ever visited. We're nowhere near that. But the proof of concept is now there. Human DNA can survive on cave walls for thousands of years, and that opens a completely new archaeological archive. Not just bones, not just tools, not just paintings, walls themselves. For thousands of years, a cave wall could look completely silent. A person touches it, walks away, and disappears from history. Their bones may never be found, their name was never written down, their story was never recorded. But perhaps a microscopic trace remained, and thousands of years later, scientists can finally detect it. We still don't know exactly who those people were. We don't know exactly why their DNA ended up where it did. And we can't yet say that the DNA belonged to the artists themselves. But we've learned something extraordinary. Sometimes, the evidence that an ancient human was there isn't a skeleton. It might be hiding on the wall.